It's only been a week in the legacy media, now in the final stages of grief, and there are 5 stages. They've never been so lost before. It started with denial after Trump won the election. Then it was anger. How did this happen? Who do we blame? They skipped bargaining and went right to depression. They're still in depression right now, and now they're in the very final stages of acceptance. Their big problem is they don't know what to accept yet. CBS, NBC, ABC, CNN, MSNBC, they are all completely lost, and they are all completely incapable of covering anything Donald Trump does honestly. It's like they're all programmed to fight Trump like robots. Every step of the way, no matter what happens, that's their mission. Every day, it's to try and turn public opinion against Donald Trump. But clearly it is not working. And don't take my word for it. Here's the only full-time employee at CNN that should be working at Newsmax.
It was so interesting to me that Donald Trump's first net approval rating of his second term is higher than his entire first term. And I was interested, has that ever happened? Has the second term net approval rating in the first month, have you ever had a higher rating than any net approval rating during the entire first term? Donald Trump is the only...
I have a really hard time believing this.
This is 100% true. I went back. I love spreadsheets. Donald Trump's is the first guy ever whose net approval rating in the first month of his second term is higher than any rating that he had in an entire first term.
I like that guy. I don't know why I like him, but I like him. And the translation is simple. Donald Trump is more popular today than he was before the election. The American people right now support what Donald Trump is doing. So given that, all that information, how does the media react over the weekend? They do what they've always done. If it's a Donald Trump policy, they attack it, even if it makes sense, even if the public supports it, something they never did to Joe Biden. Never once, even after the debate with Donald Trump where Joe Biden fell apart. So when the vice president sits down with CBS News this weekend, it's a joy to watch because J.D. Vance is not only incredibly bright, but the majority of Americans support what he's saying.
The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops this week condemned some of the executive orders signed by President Trump, specifically those allowing immigration and customs enforcement to enter churches and to enter schools. Do you personally support the idea of conducting a raid or enforcement action in a church service, at a school?
Well, let me address this. Of course, if you have a person who is convicted of a violent crime, whether they're an illegal immigrant or a non-illegal immigrant, you have to go and get that person to protect the public safety. That's not unique to immigration. But let me just address this particular issue, Margaret, because as a practicing Catholic, I was actually heartbroken by that statement.
You see what Margaret tried to do there? She tried to do it. Do you support the idea of a raid during a church service or at school? That was her question. She's trying to brand that image into the minds of the American people. The image of armed ICE agents storming into a church during Mass or a school during first period. And J.D. Vance, as he always does, answers the question with common sense and intelligence and doesn't get emotionally involved. He didn't take the bait. But if you think about it, and no one talks about this part of it, if a child rapist or a murderer was sitting next to you at church on Sunday, would you be offended at all? Honestly, if ICE agents came right in during the service and arrested that person right then and there. That hasn't happened. We don't think that will happen. But don't we want people like that off the streets? If a criminal illegal alien were going to your granddaughter's school and was wanted for something like child rape, would you really be upset if ICE agents arrested that person at school? I wouldn't. Wouldn't bother me at all. And I've got young children. Laken Riley, a 22-year-old Georgia nursing student, had her skull bashed in with a rock by an illegal alien named Jose Ibarra. If he was sitting next to you at church, 2 things. One, you wouldn't know that, but would you be upset to find out after ICE agents arrested him in the pew next to you to find out that he had done something like that? And would that upset you? I'll let you decide at home, but the answer's likely, probably not. You have common sense, but that's CBS News today. That's the legacy media, and that continued when Margaret decided to defend FEMA. Take a look.
The president did say he wants to do something with an executive order in relation to federal emergency response. He said he may reform or eliminate FEMA. Instead of sending emergency responders, he may start to send a percentage of money to states to take care of themselves. But, you know, FEMA has specialized expertise that some of these states just don't have
Oh,
in
Margaret,
their arsenal. And
I wish
how
that they...
will states who are who are lower income states, the Mississippis, the Kentuckys, the Alabamas, be able to do this for themselves without federal help?
Well, the president, to be clear, is not saying we're going to leave anybody behind. He's saying that in the way that we administer these resources, some of which is coming from the federal level, some of which is coming from the state level, we've got to get the bureaucrats out of the way and get the aid to the people who need it most.
What, does Margaret work for FEMA? Was she like a FEMA lobbyist? Give me a break. What do you care about FEMA, Margaret? So Margaret claims that FEMA has, quote, specialized expertise that some of these states, and she went like this, just don't have. Really, Margaret? Isn't that fascinating? Specialized expertise, because I seem to remember a FEMA supervisor telling her staff in writing in October to avoid any house with a Trump sign in the yard after Hurricane Milton hit Florida. Take a look.
What I'd like for the American people to know is before I even deployed to Florida, that this was the work culture there. I was on 2 teams in Florida, and the first team, when I arrived, they were implementing avoidance and de-escalation. And unfortunately, that trend ran with those Trump campaign signs. So before I even had my own crew in Highlands County, this was the practice.
So I'm just wondering if some of that specialized expertise is what that woman was talking about there. She lost her job. I also seem to remember FEMA offering hurricane victims in North Carolina, people that lost everything, $750 to rebuild. In Maui, after the wildfires there, it was only $700 to families who had lost everything. And just this month, after the wildfires in Los Angeles, FEMA offered families in LA a whole $770. Is that some of the specialized expertise you were talking about, Margaret? What Margaret failed to mention was that $70 billion, according to her own network, CBS News, is, quote, going not just toward the military, but also to help farmers subsidize small businesses and pay the country's first responders. The U.S. government has also bought seeds and fertilizer for Ukrainian farmers. America is covering the salaries of Ukraine's first responders, all 57,000 of them, and the U.S. government is subsidizing small businesses in Ukraine, including Tatiana Abaramov's knitwear company, according to CBS News, Margaret's network. Well, isn't that just wonderful? I'm so glad for Tatiana's knitting company in Western Ukraine. I'm glad that the American taxpayers can subsidize that, but not our own citizens. Margaret never mentioned any of that because her assignment on Sunday was to try to make J.D. Vance look bad. And at ABC News, it was the exact same thing. Try to make someone that works for Donald Trump, look bad at all costs. Take a look.
I want to go back to those military flights going south. As you said, we have never seen that before. Is that going to be a constant commitment from the U.S. military every single day to take deportees out?
Yes.
So is this what we will see every single day, ending in what the president has promised is millions and millions being deported?
Yes. But you're going to see the numbers steadily increase, the number of arrests nationwide as we open up the aperture. Right now it's concentrating public safety threats, national security threats.
That's Martha Raddatz, who needed clarification to the easiest question. She's just an awful journalist, by the way. I don't know why she's still doing it. Here was her question. Is that going to be a constant commitment every single day to take deportees out? Tom Homan said yes. And she said so every single day. And Tom Homan said yes. He answered the question twice, Martha, with the most basic answer ever. He said yes. Joe Biden let 12 million people into this country illegally. Many of them are criminals. They're all criminals because their underlying crime is coming to the country illegally. So now it's time for them to go home, according to Donald Trump. But CBS and ABC can't be bothered by that, even if the American people want this. And here's proof of that.
There's real uniformity here. That's what I really think you see. You see real uniformity. Deported all immigrants who are here illegally, 55% of the New York Times. Marquette, 64%. CBS News, 57%. ABC News with a slightly different question, 56%. You can really see that there's been a massive shift from when Trump was first getting into office 8 years ago. I think the American people are going to give Donald Trump the benefit of the doubt to do what he wants to do, at least if you believe these blunt questions, including this one.
I like that guy. I don't know who he is, but I like that guy. I like the cut of his jib. So the messaging on that should be crystal clear. The American people support what the Trump administration is doing. And if that means arresting someone at a church to prevent another Laken Riley from happening, then so be it. This is Joe Biden's mess. Donald Trump is just trying his best to clean it up. And the results so far have been stunning in 7 days. Since Inauguration Day, almost 3,000 criminal illegal aliens have been arrested by ICE, meaning they are no longer on the streets, no longer a threat to you, the American people. But according to CBS News, according to Margaret, every single refugee, every single one, she knows this, they've all been vetted.
When you talked to us in August, you said, I don't think we should abandon anybody who's been properly vetted and helped us. Do you stand by that?
Well, Margaret, I don't agree that all these immigrants or all these refugees have been properly vetted. We absolutely cannot unleash thousands of unvetted people into our country.
These people
it's
are
not
vetted.
good.
These people are vetted.
Just like the guy who planned a terrorist attack in Oklahoma a few months ago, he was allegedly properly vetted.
And that was a very particular case. It wasn't clear if he was radicalized when he got here or while he was living here.
I don't really care, Margaret. I don't want that person in my country, and I think most Americans agree with me.
It's not clear where he was radicalized, Afghanistan or here. That was her follow-up. I just have a couple of questions for Margaret. I work in the news. I'm privy to this stuff. I don't have an answer to that question. How would she know if every single person had been vetted? How would she know? Afghanistan is a third world country. Take me through that vetting process. I would like to know. I would like to know just so I know. I want to know how they're vetted under Joe Biden. Under the former president, we've had illegals pour into the U.S. from more than 100 countries. Among them, Haiti, Ethiopia, Venezuela, Angola, Botswana, all third world countries. Margaret, can you please explain to me how they were vetted? Take me through that process. I would like to know. The real answer is that she has no idea. But CBS News just lobs that out there deliberately to plant a seed into the minds of the American people. Hey, all these people were vetted, according to Margaret. Maybe the 30,000 people from Afghanistan should be allowed to come here to the United States. I'll tell you what, fine, but they can move to your neighborhoods, okay? You can have them in your neighborhoods. Over the weekend, it wasn't just television, it was in print as well. Ruth Marcus in the Washington Post writing that, quote, Trump 2.0 is shaping up to be a more ruthlessly effective version of its predecessor. It is willing to barrel through norms in pursuit of its agenda. Barrel through norms. Now, where have I seen that before, Ruth? Oh, yeah, right. Joe Biden. Remember when he barreled through all those norms and went after the only Republican that could beat him in the election and had his attack dogs at the DOJ indict him 4 times and charge him 91 times? Tell me, Ruth, would that qualify as barreling through norms? And what about when Joe Biden 1 week ago preemptively pardoned 5 of his family members? Would we call that barreling through norms? I think so. But that is what the legacy media has been reduced to. 7 days into Donald Trump, it is attack Trump at all costs and pretend that Joe Biden never happened. These aren't problems created by Joe Biden. These are problems created by Donald Trump. The only problem with that, it's not working.
Information. Truth is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.